Red, flashing lights bathed the main control room in a harsh, unforgiving glow. The words on the central monitor were a death sentence. System lockdown initiated. Remaining oxygen inside Vault 4 is 45 minutes. Victor, the bank's newly appointed head of cybersecurity, stared at the massive screens in pure disbelief. His $10 million artificial intelligence network was completely paralyzed. Inside that steel tomb sat the chairman of the board, trapped alongside a device the hacker claimed was a live explosive. Victor screamed at his team of elite engineers, demanding they bypass the encryption, but nothing worked. The malicious code was mutating, shifting the firewall passwords every 30 seconds. Nobody in that room had the slightest idea how to stop it. The only man who actually knew the answer was the exact same man Victor had fired a week earlier. With a smug smile, let's roll the clock back. 7 days. The bank was dead quiet, wrapped in the stillness of a Tuesday at 3 a.m. Thomas walked his usual patrol route, his heavy boots making no sound on the polished marble floors. He was 55 years old, a retired firefighter with broad shoulders and tired eyes. He was the kind of man who spoke less and observed much more. He stopped in front of the massive titanium doors of Vault 4. He didn't look at the digital keypad or the retinal scanner. Instead, he knelt down and ran his calloused thumb over a tiny, almost invisible groove near the bottom hinge. He pulled a small, battered leather notebook from his chest pocket and jotted down a quick note about the mechanical wear and tear. Routine meant everything to Thomas. He relied on discipline and memory. He needed it because at home, his wife Mary was slowly losing hers. Alzheimer's was a cruel thief, stealing her away from him, piece by piece. When she forgot the layout of their kitchen, he became her guide. When she forgot the names of their old friends, he became her voice. He took this low-paying night shift job for one simple reason. It gave him the quiet hours to monitor the cameras and the daytime hours to sit by her side. He was working relentlessly toward financial freedom, saving every dime to ensure she had the best medical care for the rest of her life. He made a promise to her a long time ago, and it was a promise he repeated every single morning. I will never give up for the ones I love. If you know what it means to fight an uphill battle for your family, I want you to type that exact phrase in the comments right now. I will never give up for the ones I love. Let it be a reminder of why you work so hard. That peaceful routine was shattered at 8 a.m. The elevator doors slid open, and Victor stepped out, flanked by 3 junior executives. Victor wore a suit that cost more than Thomas made in a month. He was 28, tech-obsessed, and carried himself like he owned the air he breathed. Victor spotted Thomas making notes by the vault and let out a loud, mocking laugh. He snatched the notebook right out of the older man's hand. He called it a pathetic relic from the dark ages of security. Victor looked Thomas dead in the eye and announced that the bank was fully transitioning to an automated AI defense grid. He said human patrols were officially obsolete, a waste of payroll. He didn't offer a reassignment. He didn't offer a transition package. He fired Thomas right there in the hallway, citing an obscure restructuring clause that completely voided his severance pay. The younger executive snickered, waiting for the old guard to throw a tantrum. But Thomas didn't yell. He didn't beg for his job. A man who has pulled people from burning buildings doesn't panic over a bruised ego. He simply unpinned his silver badge, set it gently on the security desk, and looked Victor up and down. He knew that a machine built without human intuition was just a disaster waiting to happen. Thomas packed up his thermos, walked out into the crisp morning air, and went home to his wife. Now, back in the present, that disaster had fully arrived. The hostage situation was spiraling out of control rapidly. Police cruisers had barricaded the entire financial district, their blue and red lights flashing against the glass skyscrapers. But all the guns and badges in the world were completely useless against a military-grade digital lock. The hacker had bypassed the internal network and seized total control of the physical blast doors. Victor was sweating profusely. His expensive silk tie loosened around his neck. He was frantically typing lines of code, desperately trying to initiate a manual override. But every time he tried to inject a counter script, the system locked him out and shaved a minute off the oxygen timer. The chairman was trapped inside, with a rapidly depleting air supply. The multi-million-dollar AI was essentially suffocating its own creator, miles away. The sterile hum of a hospital room provided a stark contrast to the chaos. Thomas was sitting in a plastic chair by Mary's bed. She was having a good day today, sleeping peacefully after recognizing his face that morning. He was holding her fragile hand, watching the local news on a small television mounted on the wall. The breaking news banner caught his eye immediately. Helicopter footage showed the bank surrounded by SWAT teams. The reporter confirmed that Vault 4 was completely sealed shut by a cyber attack. Thomas sat up straight, his eyes narrowing at the screen. His mind instantly flashed back to the 3-page incident report he had submitted to management nearly a month ago. It was a detailed report explaining a critical mechanical bypass flaw in the lower hinge of Vault 4, a flaw caused by years of physical wear and tear that allowed the internal locking cylinder to decouple from the electronic grid. It wasn't connected to the internet, it wasn't controlled by artificial intelligence, and it absolutely could not be patched by a software update. He distinctly remembered Victor holding that exact report, rolling his eyes, and dropping it directly into the paper shredder. Victor had called him a paranoid old fool who didn't understand modern technology. Thomas looked back down at his sleeping wife. He didn't owe that bank a single second of his time. He certainly didn't owe Victor a damn thing. In fact, letting Victor take the fall for this catastrophic failure would be the ultimate justice. But there were innocent employees in that building. There was a man sitting in a dark, airtight steel box, running out of breath, entirely because of one arrogant kid's mistake. Thomas had spent his entire life saving people. He wasn't about to stop now. Just because his feelings got hurt, he gently tucked the blanket around Mary's shoulders. He grabbed his heavy coat from the back of the chair and walked out the door. He wasn't going back to beg for a paycheck. He was going back to finish the job. The scene outside the bank was a complete madhouse. Sirens blared from every direction. News vans were parked haphazardly on the sidewalks, and tactical police teams were shouting orders over crackling megaphones. Thomas parked his beat-up truck 2 blocks away and walked right through the police tape. A young officer immediately stepped in front of him, resting his hand on his holster. But Thomas just reached into his coat and flashed his old fire department badge. "I know the layout of this building," Thomas said, his voice completely steady. "And I know exactly how to open that door." Inside the main lobby, the tension was suffocating. The massive digital monitors on the wall showed the oxygen timer inside Vault 4, ticking down to 12 minutes. Victor was pacing frantically back and forth, his face pale and slick with sweat, screaming at a technician over the phone. When Victor turned and saw Thomas walking through the glass doors, his panic instantly morphed into defensive rage. He pointed a shaking finger at the older man. "Get him out of here," Victor yelled to the police captain. "He's a disgruntled ex-employee. He probably set this whole damn thing up." Thomas didn't even break his stride. He walked straight past Victor like the kid didn't even exist. The bank's chief operating officer, a stern woman named Sarah, who had always treated the night staff with respect, stepped in front of the armed officers. "Victor, your $10 million AI system has our chairman suffocating in a steel box," she snapped, her voice cutting through the noise. She turned and looked Thomas in the eye. "Can you actually get him out?" Thomas nodded once. "I need a standard flathead screwdriver and a grounding strap." Victor let out a hysterical, mocking laugh. "A screwdriver? Are you completely out of your mind? This is military-grade encryption. You can't pry it open with hand tools, you old fool." Thomas finally stopped and looked at him. "I'm not going to pry it open. I'm going to bypass your network." Thomas approached the massive titanium door. The digital keypad was flashing a bright red error code, locked in an endless digital loop. He ignored the screen entirely. He knelt down by the bottom right hinge, right where he used to run his thumb every single night on his patrol. He strapped the grounding wire to his wrist to prevent any static discharge from frying the internal analog relay. He knew exactly what he was doing. He had studied the structural blueprints of this building for years. He had walked these floors in the dead of night, memorizing every bolt, every mechanical flaw, every sound the metal made when the temperature dropped. He did it because he took absolute pride in his work. He did it because a man's word means something. He promised his wife he would provide for her, and a man who makes a promise like that doesn't take shortcuts. Right now, I want you to think about the promises you've made to your own family. Think about the quiet sacrifices you make when absolutely no one is watching. If you are someone who fights through the hard days for your family, I want you to go down to the comments right now and write, "I will never give up for the ones I love." Put it in writing. Make it real. Let the world know what drives you. Thomas slipped the screwdriver into a microscopic gap between the hinge casing and the marble floor plate. Victor was still ranting in the background, telling the executives that Thomas was going to trigger the explosive device. Thomas tuned him out. He felt the cold metal, sliding the tool blindly until he found the analog override switch, a switch that was completely disconnected from the Wi-Fi, a switch the AI didn't even know existed. He twisted the handle. Hard. There was a heavy, echoing metallic clank. The red error code on the digital screen suddenly flickered and died. The hydraulic seals hissed loudly. The 10-ton titanium door slowly swung open. The chairman stumbled out into the lobby, gasping heavily for the fresh air. Paramedics immediately rushed forward to catch him. The bomb squad moved in with their shields raised, only to quickly discover the explosive was nothing but road flares and a cheap alarm clock wired together. It was just a scare tactic. The lobby erupted into cheers and applause, but Thomas just stood back, quietly wiping the grease off his hands with a cloth rag. Victor, sweating profusely through his expensive suit, tried to seize the moment. He pushed his way to the front of the crowd. "We got him out," Victor told the chairman, his voice trembling as he tried to take the credit. "The system rebooted just in time. We managed to break the hacker's encryption." Thomas stopped wiping his hands. He walked over to the open vault, stepped inside the dark room, and pulled a physical hard drive straight out of the internal security rack. It was the analog backup drive, the one the digital network couldn't wipe or alter. He walked back out and handed it directly to the police captain. "You might want to have your cyber crimes unit look at that," Thomas said quietly. "It logs every physical port connection in this building." Victor's face instantly drained of all color. Thomas looked at the chairman, who was now sitting on a gurney, breathing heavily through an oxygen mask. "Your system didn't get hacked from the outside, sir," Thomas said. "The firewall was manually disabled from a terminal inside this building, specifically the terminal in the head of cybersecurity's office." The room went dead silent. The police investigation later revealed the whole ugly truth. Victor hadn't planned the hostage situation himself, but he had intentionally weakened the firewall a week prior. He did it to justify purchasing a massive, overpriced security upgrade package from a private tech firm, a firm owned by his college roommate, who had promised Victor a massive cash kickback under the table. The hacker had simply found the digital back door that Victor left wide open. Victor was handcuffed right there in the lobby, stammering, crying, and begging for a second chance as the officers read him his rights and dragged him out the glass doors. A machine might not have feelings, but human greed is the oldest glitch in the book. 3 days later, Thomas walked back into the bank. He wasn't wearing a cheap, faded security uniform anymore. The chairman had personally requested a meeting. They sat in the top-floor boardroom, looking out over the entire city skyline. The chairman didn't just apologize for the way Thomas was treated. He offered Thomas a newly created position, Director of Physical Security and Systems Integrity. It came with a corner office, a dedicated team of 20 men, and a salary that made Thomas blink twice. But the chairman didn't stop there. He slid a thick, sealed envelope across the mahogany table. "I know about your wife, Thomas," the chairman said softly, looking the older man in the eye. "The board and I have set up a private trust. Mary's medical expenses are fully covered. The best doctors, the best care facilities. For the rest of her life, for the first time in years. The crushing, heavy weight on Thomas's shoulders finally lifted. He didn't cry, but his eyes were remarkably bright as he reached across the table and shook the chairman's hand. That evening, the hospital room was perfectly quiet. Bathed in the soft orange glow of the setting sun, Thomas sat in the plastic chair, holding Mary's fragile hand in his. She looked at him, her eyes wonderfully clear for a moment. "Did you have a good day at work, honey?" she asked, her voice soft and frail. Thomas smiled, gently squeezing her fingers. "Yeah, Mary. I had a pretty good day. We don't have to worry anymore. I've got you." She might forget the conversation by tomorrow morning. She might forget his name again when the sun comes up, but Thomas would be there to remind her. Every single day. Because true strength isn't about being the loudest guy in the room or having the most expensive college degree. It's about showing up, doing the hard work, and protecting the people who matter most, no matter the cost. Before you close this video, I want you to leave this promise in the comments one last time. I will never give up. For the ones I love. If you believe that real value comes from hard work, integrity, and loyalty, hit that subscribe button right now, join our community, and let's keep building a life we can be proud of. See you in the next story.